Welcome to our deep dive. Today, we're taking a close look at excerpts from a report called Regime Justice in Turkey, Erosion of Judicial Independence. Our aim here is to really explore what this report details about shifts in Turkey's judicial system, particularly after July 2016, and what it claims the consequences have been. It's serious material, so we'll be focusing strictly on the report's findings and analysis.
Right. And the report, well, it starts right in that immediate aftermath of the July 15th, 2016 events, the state of emergency period. A major point it makes right away is about the sheer scale of dismissals. We're talking mass dismissals, purges even, of judges and prosecutors.
And the way these dismissals happened is key to the report's argument, isn't it?
Exactly. The report claims they were carried out using these statutory decrees, the KHKs, and it argues that essential due process, things like defense rights, were reportedly missing. What's really striking, according to the source, is the claim these dismissals often relied on lists allegedly drawn up before the events.
Wow. So the report's basically painting a picture of a very fast, maybe even pre-calculated change happening right then.
That's certainly the argument it puts forward. It also highlights a major restructuring happening at the same time of the Hakimler ve Savcılar Kurulu. That's the Council of Judges and Prosecutors. And the report states the consequences of all this together were, well, a serious weakening of judicial independence. It raises big concerns about impartiality and a lack of accountability for alleged ill treatment, too.
Okay, and the report doesn't just state this in isolation. It seems to bring in international perspectives. What does it say there?
Yes, it does. It mentions criticism from well-known international bodies, groups that look at rule of law issues like the Venice Commission and the OECD. The report says they apparently raise serious flags about transparency,
Right.
or the lack of it, the evidence standards used, the legal processes, basically seeing it as a major hit to judicial independence.
Right. And I noticed the source material makes specific mention of the European Court of Human Rights. How does the report use their rulings?
Yes. This is where the report connects its analysis to concrete legal findings. It points to rulings from the European Court of Human Rights. For instance, cases like Alparslan Altan v. Turkey and Hakan Baş v. Turkey. The report states the court found rights violations there linked to the mass arrests, and maybe even more significantly, it highlights the Yüksel Yalçınkaya v. Turkey case. There, the report says the Grand Chamber of the European Court of Human Rights found violations related to fair trial rights, legality principles like no punishment without law, and freedom of association.
So beyond those initial sort of purges and dismissals, the report talks about specific mechanisms of what it calls regime justice.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a bit? What does the report mean?
This is where it gets into the structural changes, the ones the report argues were designed to sort of cement control. It talks about the creation of the Suçeza Hakimlikleri, the criminal judgeships of peace. The report actually links their creation to political statements, suggesting a political motive right from the start. It describes them as centers for potentially arbitrary decisions, pointing to a lack of effective ways to appeal their rulings. And again, it notes the Venice Commission also criticized these courts.
Okay, so these new courts are presented as one key mechanism. What about the changes to the Hakimler ve Savcılar Kurulu, the HSK we mentioned earlier? Is that part of this framework too, according to the report?
Oh, absolutely. The report argues that the changes to how the HSK is structured and how its members get selected, changes brought in by laws and the 2017 constitutional amendments, well, it claims these changes really diluted the influence of judges and prosecutors themselves within the council. The report says it essentially boosted the power of the executive and parliament, effectively, the president, over the council. And it brings the Venice Commission back in here, citing their worries about this leading to more partisanship and political control over judges.
And the report tries to make this tangible with specific examples, right? Cases where judges apparently face repercussions.
It does, yeah. It mentions things like the acquittal of a former lieutenant general or acquittals in the Gezi trial. The report presents these as instances where judicial decisions that seem to go against the political grain were reportedly followed very quickly by political criticism. And then, it claims, disciplinary investigations or reassignments for the judges involved. The source interprets this as pretty clear evidence of consequences for perceived judicial independence.
So pulling all these threads together, the dismissals, the international view, these new courts, the HSK changes, the specific case examples, what's the core conclusion the report wants you, the listener, to take away?
The report's conclusion is that these actions, taken together, were systematic and, in its assessment, deliberately used to consolidate political power and also to target opposition figures and groups. It argues these moves fundamentally changed the judiciary's nature and really eroded basic rights and legal protections in Turkey.
Which really highlights the report's central argument, that legal structures themselves were allegedly altered, quite purposefully, to exert political control. It leaves you with a significant question to think about. How might the kinds of changes reported here, this alleged shift in the balance between political power and the judiciary, actually affect everyday life and the legal safeguards people depend on? We've really only scratched the surface of this report's detailed analysis today, and we'll continue to explore its findings in our upcoming deep dives.